G'day, I'm Rob Malicki and welcome to the Choosing Your Uni National Virtual Expo and to this session on the University of Newcastle. Firstly, declaration of where I am right now. I'm on Garigal land in Sydney. I'm so proud to live and work on Garigal land. I'm so grateful to the traditional owners who've taken such good care of this place over thousands and thousands of years. Now, before I get started, I wanted to let you know what's coming up in the next 20 minutes. And firstly, hello to those of you who are joining me live on the live stream. If you've got questions or comments, drop them in the chat, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, drop your questions in the chat and I will try to get to them by the end of this session. If I don't manage to get to your individual question during this session, we will add all of those to the Choosing Your Uni Discord. It's a place where you can go to get free and independent advice about your choice of different fields of studies and unis, and we'll make sure that all of those questions are answered there. Now, if you are watching this on a replay, thank you also for joining. Those communities are available for you. The Choosing Your Uni Discord, details in the session notes below. And if you're a parent, we've got a special Facebook community just for you. So in the next 20 minutes, some of the topics that we're going to be covering off are things like what the University of Newcastle is known for, what kind of students would be well suited to studying there. We're also going to be hearing from some students who are from the University of Newcastle who've studied there, so you hear directly from students that have had that experience. And we're going to be finding out about the university's academic strengths and about how it ranks. And we're going to get behind the details with rankings because when we talk about data about things like student satisfaction and graduate employment and things like that, global rankings, it can be a little bit of confusing. There's a fair bit of marketing talk, I must admit, when it comes to talking about universities. I'm going to be straight about it with you. We're going to break down all those numbers to help figure out if that university might be the right one for you. And at the end, I'm going to give you some institutions that I would personally think about comparing the Uni of Newcastle against, should I be making that choice. There are a couple of obvious ones, and there's at least one that I think you'll find quite surprising. So once again, details are in the session notes below. If you'd like to answer any questions, you can drop them in the chat. And just look, a little bit of an apology. There's a fair bit of construction going on outside as we're going to air here. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, I apologise for that in advance. So, the University of Newcastle, what kind of student will be suited there? And in fact, you know what, before we get started, I have forgotten one thing, my apologies. And that's that this entire event has been made possible by Southern Cross University. They're our major presenting partner. A quick word from SCU, and then we'll get right into the Uni of Newcastle.
Today's students are tomorrow's front line. Today's visionaries will become tomorrow's leaders. And today's research will discover tomorrow's solutions for ourselves, for others, and for our world. Southern Cross University, transforming tomorrow.
Here's a number that might surprise you. The University of Newcastle has a graduate employment rate of nearly 85%. That puts it ahead of every single member of the group of 8 universities in Australia. That's ahead of the Uni of Sydney, the Uni of Melbourne, the University of New South Wales, ahead of all of them. And the group of 8 is Australia's coalition of the most prestigious research-intensive universities. You know what? Newcastle ain't in that club, but on the metric that really matters, which is whether or not you'll actually get a job at the end of the degree, Newcastle is beating them all. Now, let me save you some time because I'm going to get into why and how it manages to beat those institutions, but this uni isn't for everyone. So let me tell you who it's probably not for. Uni of Newcastle probably isn't for you if you're looking for that big city campus experience. The main campus of the Uni of Newcastle is in Newcastle, but it's in the suburbs. It's a beautiful 140 hectares of bushland. Honestly, one of the most beautiful bushland campuses in all of Australia. But bushland isn't inner city. If you're looking for that buzzing 24/7 inner city experience at uni, sorry, but Uni of Newcastle is not going to deliver that for you. Also, this isn't an institution for you if you really care about the brand name, about the prestige, and if you don't care about what happens after you graduate. Newcastle doesn't have that same name recognition as the Sandstone Universities, the group of 8. It earns its reputation through outcomes, not through heritage. But if you want a university that is still research strong, where you'll actually get really good hands-on experience, where the cost of living won't crush you to death, and where the people around you come from genuinely diverse backgrounds, this institution could be for you. So stick around. Now, before I get into more of the details, let's hear from a student who has actually studied at the Uni of Newcastle and see what they say about their experience. What's it like studying at Uni of Newcastle?
It's a bushland campus.
Yeah.
That is fairly unique. So I look at other campuses in other universities and I go, oh, there's the central campus.
Yeah.
That's right in the middle of the city, and you've got everything that happens in the city going on at all at the same time. And that is really enticing to me because this is the only campus that I've ever known as a university student. But when you hear people talk about the negative aspects of having an inner city campus, those negative aspects are really big, and that's a problem. If I had to choose, I would choose a campus that looks like this.
Yeah.
And sounds like this, and smells like this.
Always interesting to hear from the perspectives of people who've studied in a place. Remember, it is just one perspective, and of course, everybody has a unique experience as they go through university. So depending on what field of study and which campus you end up at this particular institution, your experience may be different to the one that we've just heard about. But it's still good to hear from the voices of people who are actually studying there. And once again, any questions, drop them in the chat, and also down in the description below you'll find a link to our session catalogue, all of the different sessions, the keynotes, government sessions, you'll find them all down there in the catalogue. So now let me give you 3 things that really define this university. Firstly, Newcastle absolutely punches above its weight when it comes to health and medical research. The university was one of the pioneers of problem-based learning in medicine in Australia, and what that means is that instead of sitting in lectures and memorising textbook chapters, medical students work through real clinical scenarios from very early on in their degrees. The Hunter Medical Research Institute, or the HMRI, is a joint venture between the university and the local health district, with over 1,000 researchers working across everything from cancer to mental health to respiratory disease. So if you're interested in health, medicine, nursing, allied health, this is one of the strongest ecosystems in the country outside of a capital city, and I don't say that lightly. Secondly, this university, Newcastle, is one that genuinely cares about equity and access. And I don't mean that in like a brochure way, like all students are welcome here, because lots of universities will talk the talk. Newcastle has one of the highest proportions of students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, as well as students from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. It has one of the highest proportions of any Australian university. It runs dedicated enabling programs. Essentially, these are like pathway courses that let people who didn't get the ATAR they needed, or who've been out of school for some time, to essentially prove that they can handle university level study. And then allow those people to transition into a degree. Now, of course, the ATAR, the Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank, is that rank between 0 and 99.95 that compares you against other students in Year 12. It's still the main number that universities use for school leavers to admit them to university. But Newcastle has built real infrastructure whose path doesn't follow that standard route. The Wallatuka Institute, which is the First Nations Institute on campus, also provides cultural, academic and social support for First Nations students. And you know what? It's embedded right through the university's operations. Wallatuka is an absolutely fantastic organisation. Now, as we're talking about uni, going to uni, how it all works, these are things that you need to understand. It's kind of like the process. And we've got a great session from the Australian Government on support for university studies from the Australian Government. It's covering everything from HEX help and repayments through to prac placement payments and everything else that you need to know, including about how that all works, paying it back through your taxes. It was one of our first sessions on the first day of the Virtual Expo, and you can find the link to it down below. The third reason I think Newcastle is an absolute standout choice for certain students is that it's absolutely deeply connected to its region, to the Hunter region. The Hunter region is going through one of the most dramatic economic transitions in all of Australia. It's a region that was basically founded on coal, and it's now shifting from coal to clean energy and advanced manufacturing. And the university is right at the centre of that transition through its Newcastle Institute for Energy and Resources. And that's covering everything from energy storage to decarbonisation to water treatment. So obviously, if you're doing things like engineering and environmental science, students aren't just studying theory in isolation. They are literally working alongside industry partners on problems that are facing the community right now. And those outcomes are literally going to make a difference in the real community, in the real world. Let's move on to the academic strengths and dive into these in a little bit of detail. The university is organised into three big colleges. We have engineering, science and environment. We've got health, medicine and wellbeing. And we've got human and social futures. Across these colleges, there are more than 700 program options, and that includes single degrees, combined degrees, and postgraduate degrees. As we've sort of alluded, the standout discipline, probably medicine and health, is like the headline act, and that's absolutely deservedly so. The medical school's problem-based learning model has proven nationally influential. But other health disciplines are also incredibly strong. Nursing and midwifery are super strong, and Newcastle consistently performs well above national satisfaction surveys in these areas. Clinical placements are embedded through partnerships with hospitals and health services across the Hunter and the Central Coast. And if you're considering going into medicine, going into health, we've got an awesome session with Mission Med about getting into medicine and understanding the UCAT, the University Clinical Aptitude Test, UCAT. That session is available, and you can look that up in the session description, in the session catalogue below. Another one of the major academic pillars is engineering, and Newcastle has a very comprehensive offering here. It's got civil, mechanical, electrical, environmental, and computer engineering. So it's got all of the breadth that you would hope for, as well as the research infrastructure to back that up. That Energy Futures lab that I was talking about has pilot scale facilities where researchers and students literally test clean energy technology, and that's at like a near industrial scale. This kind of hands-on experience for undergraduates can be quite unusual for Australian universities, and it's really cutting edge. You're solving and working on real world problems. One of the other standout areas in terms of academics is education for the university, and Newcastle has been training teachers since 1949, so it's got a deep expertise in that space. And you know, that's long before the university even formally existed. Teacher education students do extensive school placements in regional schools, and the program has a strong reputation amongst education employers in New South Wales. Now, alongside that, we have many other disciplines, things like business, law, architecture, and creative industries, and these are all pretty solid, particularly through the Newcastle City campus. It's called New Space, where students are literally studying right in the heart of Newcastle, just a couple of kilometres from some of the most beautiful beaches that you will find on the New South Wales coastline. Certainly some of the most beautiful beaches associated with like a regional city. So it's a great place for you to study. And that experience of studying in the heart of Newcastle is very different to studying on the Callaghan campus. It's more urban, it's more compact, it's basically like a couple of buildings and lots of cafes and stuff around. And it's also more connected to the professional world of the Newcastle city centre. So I want to flag that. Newcastle has campuses in multiple locations. We've talked about Callaghan, the main campus, the Newcastle City campus, New Space. We have the Central Coast at Arimba, which is a small but quite a beautiful little space there. It also has the new Gosford Teaching Hospital space, which is brand new and really adds to the university's footprint on the Central Coast. We have a teaching space, which is more for like your professional postgraduate programs in the heart of Sydney. And there's even a Singapore campus. So what does that mean for you? Well, not every degree, not every study option is available at every campus. So you're going to have to check where your particular program of study is offered. The other thing to remember is that each campus has its own experience. So if you're considering Newcastle, check which campus, which degree is offered at which campus, and then think about what kind of experience it is. At Callaghan, the full uni experience is like beautiful bushland, on-campus student accommodation, sports facilities. It's the whole university experience. The Central Coast campus is smaller and shared with TAFE. TAFE, of course, being the vocational education option, which is great. If you're looking to transition from vocational education into uni, co-location is good. You already get the flavour of being in the same environment. Sydney, as I've mentioned, is about postgraduate, and it's really important just to know what you're signing up for. If you're thinking of studying in a regional setting and want to understand what that means practically, including things like accommodation and transport and what social life is actually like, we've got a whole session on moving away for uni. And it talks about what it's like to move to a regional area, what sort of things to expect, and what sort of things you need to consider as part of that experience of moving somewhere else for university. Personally, there are amazing university options all over Australia. And if you're in a position to move away from home in order to go to uni, it's something that I would actually seriously consider these days. Many universities are doing an incredible job of creating an on-campus experience that really takes your uni experience to the next level. So go and check that session out as well. You'll find it in the session catalogue. Let's talk about research infrastructure, and it deserves another mention because it does directly affect the student experience. The Hunter Medical Research Institute isn't just for the most advanced doctoral students. Even honours students and some advanced undergraduates can get access to genuine research projects. When a university has that kind of applied research happening on its doorstep, it creates opportunities that you simply don't get elsewhere. And so it's really worth considering. And it's not like research is being siloed away from teaching. This is an opportunity for you to get really learnings from what's going on at the coalface of new research. Why don't we hear from another student, hear what they say about the University of Newcastle, and don't forget, look, so once again, session notes, if you're thinking about what keynotes are available, we have amazing keynotes as part of the Expo. Check them out in the session description below. Let's hear from another student. And what have you enjoyed most about this campus at UON?
This campus for me has been a really cool part about studying here at Newcastle. Being able to study in a beautiful air-conditioned room and then come back outside and you're walking amongst sort of this kind of an atmosphere is really cool. On top of that, the teaching facilities and everything are fantastic. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it, yeah.
All right, so you've heard a bit of the story of the university. You've heard about academic areas, you've heard a couple of student perspectives. Now I want to show you where the Uni of Newcastle actually lands in respect of the national data. For some of these numbers, they genuinely surprised me, and at least one of them will challenge what you assume about this university, comparing it against some of the bigger names. So the data we're about to go through comes from the Quality Indicators of Learning and Teaching, the QUILT survey. It's done by the Social Research Centre on behalf of the Australian government. We've got a whole session on that as well, how to interpret that data and how to use it in your choice. And QUILT data is data that's about real students, actual people who've studied on these Australian universities and in the disciplines that you may be considering. We'll also have a look at some of the global rankings, but global rankings you need to take with a grain of salt, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Let's start off with the non-marketing independent data from the QUILT survey. And starting with student satisfaction, Newcastle sits at 78.1% student satisfaction. That's solidly above the national average. It's not the highest in the country, but it's comfortably in the upper half. And what that tells you is that most students, nearly 4 out of 5 that go to uni, feel well supported and they're getting what they expect from their degree. Teaching quality also connects to that. The university's emphasis on problem-based learning and work-integrated learning means that students aren't just spending all their time in lecture theatres, they're doing other things. And that model tends to drive more student satisfaction, especially in disciplines like health and engineering. Now, here's that number that I led with right up at the top, but it bears repeating. Graduate employment, 84.6%. That's about 16th in Australia and is well ahead of every group of 8 university except the Australian National University. For context, the University of Sydney is at 80.1%, the University of Melbourne is at 67.7%. So think about that for a second. The University of Newcastle graduates are getting jobs at significantly higher rates than graduates from institutions ranked hundreds above them globally. Why? Well, there's 2 main reasons. The first, work-integrated learning. That means that students graduate with real workplace experience and it's already on their CV. And then there's the alignment with regional industries. We're talking about health and engineering and education and energy. And that means that there's genuine employer demand for graduates from the University of Newcastle. Median graduate salary sits at $71,000. That's solid. It's above the national mean, so it's basically better than most universities, about in the middle, and it's competitive outside of those that are right at the highest end of the table. What I think is important here is that the unis that tend to do best in terms of starting salaries are the regional universities, the pure regional universities, because demand for those graduates is high. If you're a particular graduate in Armidale or in Toowoomba, you're going to be in demand because there are fewer graduates in the local community compared to Sydney and Melbourne. Newcastle is interesting because it sort of straddles that divide between pure regional and metropolitan. And so it's a very good result and tending to be a higher starting salary for all disciplines, not just for some of those peak disciplines where graduate starting salaries are high, like engineering, education, and things like that. Let's look now at the global rankings. The university does pretty well on global rankings. It sits at 227th in the world on the QS, World Rankings of Universities, and that puts it as 16th in Australia. On the Times Higher Education ranking, it's ranked in the 250 to 300 band, which puts it 14th nationally, equal 14th, and both of these are really respectable positions. But here's where I need to be honest with you about the global rankings. They really rely heavily on things like research output and international reputation. So when you see a university listed as like number 1 or number 2 or really high in the country, often those institutions are the ones that have churned out the most research. I say churned in a positive way. They literally produce a huge volume of research, and where they are internationally recognised. So a big brand name like Uni of Sydney or Uni of Melbourne is more recognised than the University of Newcastle, let's face it. So that tends to impact the smaller institutions in terms of those global rankings. The other thing that they don't tell is the full story. So you don't get the nuance that you get, for example, from the Quilt data about how individual subject areas are performing, student satisfaction, graduate employment, stuff like that. So it is really important for you to look into the detail of those global rankings and deciding whether or not that ranking actually means anything to you. The most useful of those rankings, if you are going to look at global rankings, in my opinion, is to look at the subject-specific rankings to see which areas inside an institution actually do really well on a global scale and see if those are areas that you're interested in. Now, it can be really challenging for you to research all these numbers, to decide what they mean, decide how they're relevant to you. So a little shout out to what we do at Choosing Your Uni. We've built a whole platform to make that easy, basically like ChatGPT style. You can go in and ask all of your questions about going to university, different fields of study, different institutions. You can do comparisons, you can ask for the numbers, and it will literally give you the answers without you having to conduct a whole heap of Google searches. Now, let's move on to comparisons. Love this section, all right? Comparisons. If I were making a comparison and I was trying to choose Uni of Newcastle or somewhere else, there are some institutions that I would automatically compare it against. So I'll get to those in just a second. Before I do, I just want to share this little fun fact from Southern Cross University. Let's have a quick look at this, and then I'm going to tell you about which institutions I'd be comparing with the University of Newcastle.
I got my first grade at uni, and I just laughed out loud. It wasn't just a pass, I actually got a high distinction, and I'd always done terrible at school. I did the PSP course at SEU, which gave me the foundations of what you need to be able to study at uni, and I didn't fail that, got good grades, so I was like, hey, we'll keep going. Studied a bachelor in psych, did all right, so I kept going and got into honours, and now I'm writing a thesis. Getting that first grade was the first time that I felt like I can actually do this, and it has led me to get to where I am now, and I'm really grateful of it.
Okay, so the first institution I'd probably compare Newcastle with is Macquarie University down in Sydney. It's probably one of the closest geographically. I mean, it's still quite far away in the sense that it's down in Sydney, a few hours away. But if you're from the Hunter or the Central Coast, Macquarie, which is in Sydney's northwest, is probably the nearest alternative offer that offers a similar breadth of programs to the Uni of Newcastle. It's ranked higher than UON. It's ranked about 138th on the QS ratings, and it's in Sydney, which matters if city access is important to you. But Macquarie's graduate employment rate is 78.7% versus Newcastle's at 84.6%. So it has lower graduate employment compared to Newcastle. Sydney's also expensive, let's face it. It's dramatically higher to live in Sydney than it is to live in Newcastle. So if the question, so then the question becomes like, what do you value more? Do you want to be living in Sydney, or do you want to have a better shot at a job with more money in your pocket while you study? Maybe simplifying a bit there. Macquarie is very accessible, even if you're coming down the coast. If you're taking the train down part way and then jumping on the metro, it is pretty accessible these days too. So it's a legitimate comparison. The next comparison, and it's kind of based more around what kind of institution it is. For me, it's the University of Wollongong. Wollongong is located, an hour and a half south of Sydney, Newcastle an hour and a half north of Sydney. Both are located on the coast. Both are considered regional New South Wales and regional institutions with strong engineering programs and health programs. Both of those unis, Wollongong and Newcastle, have research profiles that really punch above their weight, and both of them have really strong connections to their local communities. Wollongong ranks a little bit higher on global scales, 184th on QS versus about 220 for the Uni of Wollongong. But it's sort of comparable when it comes to student satisfaction. Actually, a little bit ahead of Newcastle. It's got an 80% student satisfaction. That same thing, 4 in 5 students having an experience they're satisfied with. So if you had to choose between them, if I was choosing between them, really you're starting to talk about, well, which region appeals to you most? Both of them have beautiful beaches. Both of them have pretty little town centres. Newcastle's probably got a bit more opportunity as far as I'm concerned, but Wollongong's probably a bit closer to the centre of Sydney if you want to jump on the train and get up there. So what I'd recommend is that you watch the deep dive about the Uni of Wollongong, and if you're looking to make that comparison, that would be the place to go and do just that. Now, the last one, in fact, I'm going to give a couple of options here that might surprise you, because Newcastle has like proximity to a major city, being Sydney, has these real areas of strength, but there are some other institutions around the country that have a similar sort of feel to them as well. So I'd look at places like Flinders in Adelaide. So maybe you're an international student, you're thinking of moving to Australia to study, or you're moving from somewhere else in Australia, looking to move to Newcastle or somewhere else for studies. Flinders University down in Adelaide, I think is really worth a look. Very strong engineering programs, exceptional health science programs. It sits south of the Adelaide city centre, and it's got a beautiful campus, a lovely big open campus, plus its Tonsley Innovation District, where you've got all of the high engineering and high tech work going on. So to me, Flinders is probably worth a look. If you're looking over in Western Australia, there's a couple of great institutions that have a similar sort of feel to them. You've got places like Curtin University, Murdoch, which has very good engineering too. You've got Edith Cowan University that has a number of really good practical-based programs. Those institutions are probably worth a look as well. And then if you're looking up in Queensland, if you're looking inside Brisbane, for example, you've got great options that include QUT, also very strong in engineering and health, very connected to real-world practice and industry, and Griffith University when it comes to social access, supporting students, getting students in, but also offering a really great student experience across some of those key areas, education and health. Griffith, with its campuses in Brisbane and on the Gold Coast, honestly, very well worth a look as well. Of course, we have sessions on all of those universities. You can check them out in the session catalogue. Some of those sessions have now run and are available on demand, and some of them are upcoming. Now, we're running right to the end. I'm sorry, but I don't have to make one question. I've got time for one question that has been pre-submitted. All of your other questions that you've dropped in the chat or that you'd like asked, Choosing Your Uni Discord and the parent Facebook community, and I will get back to every single one of those. This one came from a student from Sydney who was thinking about moving up to Newcastle, so moving out of Sydney. Newcastle Uni's Callaghan campus is outside the city centre. Is there much to do around there, or is it pretty isolated. I'll be very honest, it's a magnificent campus. Tall trees, super chilled vibe. It's beautiful, it's very chilled out. The campus itself has some bars and food outlets. It's got the Bar on the Hill, which is an absolutely classical institution in Australian higher education in terms of campus life, but it's not a buzzing part of the city. It is away from the city centre. It's not hard to get from there to the beaches. There are buses that run down to the centre of town. There's also a train, which is not that super easy to access, that'll take you down towards the centre of town and on-campus accommodation. But it is outside the centre of the city, which means it has a particular type of feel. If it were me looking to move to Newcastle, I would probably try and have somewhere where I could split my time between the new space in the city centre and the Callaghan campus to get the best of both worlds. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for as part of this session. Thank you for joining me for this session at the National Virtual Expo. Of course, we have sessions all week. Don't miss out on all of them. Some amazing keynotes, some great fireside conversations to help you with your choice. And if you don't know where to get started, the Choosing Your Uni platform is just there for that. Helps guide you using high technology to the fields of studies and universities that line up with your interests, goals, and preferences. So avoid the marketing hype and just get straight to the source of truth. My name's Rob Malicki. Been great chatting with you, and I'll see you in one of the upcoming sessions real soon. Have a great day. Well, I hope you got something out of this session, and if you have any questions at all, you can head to choosingyouruni.com and ask Lumen. Lumen is your AI guide who knows about every university, every pathway, every option that we've talked about throughout this virtual expo, and Lumen is available to talk to you 24/7, so it's ready when you are.